So thank you everyone for joining. My name is Shamsudeen Mohammed, and I'm a PhD student at the University of Porto, Portugal, and from Nigeria as well. I'm an active member of Masakhane community, and also a founder for Hausa NLP. Hausa is one of the second largest, language spoken in Africa. So in this talk, I will give a talk basically on test classification, low resource African languages, basically sentiment analysis and Africa, a project called AfriHate, which basically detection of hate speech in African languages. You basically, if you attended my previous talk, like Samuel in Africa, I discussed most of the slides, so I will introduce two things. AfriSenti, which is basically a shared task in sentiment analysis for African languages in 18 languages. I will also discuss AfriSenti, which is basically a project for sentiment analysis in Nigeria, which, moved and, to AfriSenti. And finally, I will introduce AfriHate, which is basically hate speech detection in African language, which also include Kinyarwanda and also Ghanaian languages. So I think the people here may be interested to see those languages. Okay, so that's what I would. So basically, the motivation we all know is, African languages, about 2,000. They are low resource in the sense that they are not actually being seen in venues for NLP. So if you look at this is basically a graph of, ACL 2020, and at least 25 countries with most submissions. However, none of these countries you can see from Africa. The dominance is not only on countries. When we zoom in, we'll see even the, some languages dominate. So we can see here like English, China, they dominate, the NLP communities. If you also look at this, we can see, authors with papers in different kind of ACL calling, we can see, look at these very small amount of number in those years, you can see not more than 20 in all of this, you can see. So basically, African NLP researchers, they are not represented in, NLP community. But one may naturally ask question why African countries are not represented in NLP community or machine learning community. And the basic answer is that lack of funding to, develop resources for languages and also fewer AI researchers. So these are two things that, drag African, researchers to be part of this global community. But thanks God, these two issues, fewer African AI researchers and lack of funding, they are now becoming history because there are a lot of, interventions. So in terms of AI community, we can see here now there are a lot of community that is coming. Masakhane, with Black in AI, a lot of Ghana NLP, House NLP, a lot of communities, they are coming up and, they are, for example, Masakhane, voluntary people just come and create data set as a passion. That's how Masakhane started. That's what we call participatory approach. So this participatory approach really, brings African NLP researchers now to start publishing in this kind of conferences. But also, if we talk about the funding, thanks to Lacuna Fund, they are now creating, supporting and funding institutions to develop data sets for low resource languages. Last year, I got a fund to, build data set for sentiment analysis for Nigerian languages. And this year we got a funding for AfriHate, which is basically to create hate speech corpus for African languages, which we will see in a bit. Right, so we have now seen, saying that African languages, what is basically, lacking is data set, but they are also less organized in the sense that there may be available of a data set for a particular language, but you will never be able to find it. So last year I attended a conference, and unfortunately someone was presenting a paper and it was basically on my language. And when I asked him, does he knows any resources for that, tax he is presenting, he says no, but there are a bunch of amount of resources. So African languages, they are not only, low resource, but they are less organized. Thanks to Lanfrica, now Lanfrica comes, trying to put all resources for African languages, a single repository, which, will now be available for other researchers to find it easy to access. So that's basically, the basic. And now let's move on to sentiment analysis. After the introduction of, the whole lackness of data. Now, what is sentiment analysis? Basically, a task that allows us to, find opinion in a text, whether the text is positive, negative, or neutral. Still, lack of data in Africa. If you look at this slide, you can see only 17 publicly available data set for, sentiment analysis from Lanfrica. We know Lanfrica, they are curating, collecting data set, but we can see for the whole Africa, we have 17, which is basically, we can still say low results. If you compare here, with the data set for machine translation, we can see like more than 100, but, 2 data set for these languages, and you can see the languages, they are few. So still there are non-availability of data sets. That's really something that serves as a potential blocker for people that want to work on this. But now let's move into the sentiment analysis. We have different approach to do the sentiment analysis. We have lexicon-based, machine learning, and deep learning. Lexicon-based basically allow ones to use a dictionary, which you call lexicon-based dictionary or opinion-based dictionary, which contain positive and negative words. And given any text, you try to find those words which are positive, negative, and find the sum of the positive. And this is basic approach. So if we look at an example here, we said I love a car. So you just need to find out those kind of positive words or negative inside a text and try to figure out what kind of sentiment that text is. But this is really lacking in the sense that it's not contextual, and we also know language is, dynamic. Language changes every day. So if we look at this one, his pain is increasing. So we know the word increasing basically can serve as positive in some sense, right? But here in this domain, pain increasing is negative. So this is something, is not contextual. He's a bad programmer. In this today, if we say somebody is a bad programmer, is good at programming. So we can see like, language changes, but lexicon-based analysis can, not be able to catch up with this kind of stuff. But also one of the things that, block some of the researchers to do sentiment analysis is, they take resources from high resource languages, translate them to low resource. So these are some of the studies that use lexicon-based sentiment analysis in Nigeria and now translate them to their languages. However, when you translate document to another language, the emotion, the sentiment changes. Sometimes we can do translation to translate some stuff, to do machine translation. That works, but in sentiment analysis, when you do translation alters sentiment. And we can see this as an example, in one of my language called Hausa, somebody that, goes to the Facebook and, was happy saying, hey, my wife gave birth to a new baby, but Facebook translate this to, my prostitute, instead of my wife. So you can see like translation for sentiment analysis, changes sentiment and opinion. So this is not best way to go forward. So people who don't have access to data, they try to rely on, translated data set. So that's lexicon-based, but there are now machine learning, deep learning, and this is the era what we are doing. We are all doing deep learning. So let's move on to the first one, AfriSenti. So because of this, unavailability of data and the funding we got from Lacuna, we were able to develop a sentiment corpus for Nigerian languages called AfriSenti, and this corpus involves 4 languages: Hausa, Yoruba, and Igbo. So these are some of the, this is a paper and a lot of contributors from Masakhane and House NLP. What we did, basically, we create the first, large corpus for Hausa, Yoruba, and Igbo. level Twitter dataset, over 30,000. And we also, develop sentiment lexicon, train various pre-trained language models where we release the code for researchers. So for each language, approximately we, annotate 30,000 tweets, which is, I think, this is the largest, you can ever find sentiment analysis corpus for any language in Africa. So thanks to Lacuna, without the effort for Lacuna, this cannot be possible. So we have a lot of, some of the issues relates to, African languages is that, yes, of course, we don't have funding to create these resources, but also the technological, barrier limit us from creating these resources. For example, one of the challenges we face during creating, Twitter datasets for AfriSenti is that the Twitter API does not allow one to just specify the language for any African language except, I think, one of the Ethiopian language. So, for example, if we want to download tweet from Twitter in, Kinyarwanda, you cannot say Twitter, just give me Kinyarwanda and you download it. You cannot do that. But for English and any other high resource languages, you can basically do that together. So we had a lot of challenges, and still we are in talk with Twitter, how they can be able to, add African languages so that it will be easy to get Twitter data to, do any kind of social stuff related to machine learning. So we do a lot of stuff to collect the data that, that contains, opinions, such as we use emoji and lexicon as well. And after that, when we grab the tweets, we grab tweet basically using stop words. So for example, if I want to collect tweet from Kinyarwanda, which we basically did in these tags outcome, is to just grab stop word from Kinyarwanda. And now we use this stop word and pass to Twitter. And now specify that give me tweet that contain this stop word in, in Kigali or in somewhere else, yeah. So that's basically one of the challenges we got, from getting data set. But thank God, we also use, after all, if you get the data, there's also a problem of, separating which language is which, because we know Africans, they are multilingual in nature. So when you get the data for a particular location, you can see that because we are multilingual, you can see that tweet that you get in one language, you intend to get in one language has multiple other languages. So we use different kind of, language ID stuff such as CLD3, Good Language API, Google Language API to get, defined. So now, thank God, recently, another work that has been presented by one of our colleagues is Afro-LID. So this is also a kind of good work that allows you, to detect languages in African languages, over 500 languages. So recently presented in NLP conference. So yeah. So we also had a lot of challenges for code mix. African languages, as I said, we are code mix in nature. We typically combine our language with English, and it's difficult to, grab only tweets or in one language without using code. And there, at this moment, there is no tool that allow you, to say this is a code mix, this is single language. So this is some of the challenges we got, and we basically, manually still annotate tweet that we got by giving to the annotator that, hey, classify this is code mix, meaning that it contains both one language and another language. And that's what we do. And again, one of also another challenge is tonality. Basically, what this means is that some of the Nigerian languages we have, they have what you call tonality issue, meaning a single tweet or a single text will have the same way of writing, but the tone changes the sentiment. So for example, here we can see one language, one tweet, Awon Omopo Obo, there's something written here, but they have different meaning. So the children washed the dishes and the children broke the dishes. So you can see the sentiment here really is, differs. So our annotators find it difficult to annotate such kind of, tweets, which only tone will, differentiate between the two. Okay. Finally, for AfriSenti, we did a lot of experiment. You can check the paper with a lot of pre-trained language model. We do multilingual pre-trained language model. We did lab, we multi-stat, sentiment, we use zero-shot cross-lingual transfer, a lot of experiment. And it turns out the best, models that once was AfriBata. So AfriBata was basically a very, language model trained on, very fewer data, less than 1 gig, and it outperformed all other giant models such as LSM, SLMR, MBAT. This tells us that we need to develop resources for African languages because all these giant models, the transfer they have the power of transfer, overshadowed by the, English language, all those high resource language, because the amount of data in those models for African language is very insignificant. But AfriBata with few, data set trained from scratch outperform all these languages. Now that's, AfriSenti data set for Nigerian languages. Then after we finish this task, we now think, hey, can we do better? Can we extend our work to African languages so that, we can develop sentiment corpus for other languages for Africa? So that's how AfriSenti shared tags, started. Then we basically, had the idea to, talk to people, because at the beginning we don't have any grants to create the data set for those other languages, but we contacted other people, and now some people volunteered, and now we now launches the AfriSenti SemEval. So what is AfriSenti SemEval? AfriSenti SemEval is basically academic competition. Before I said even AfriSenti, let me talk about what is SemEval. So SemEval is basically NLP research workshop, and that is, academic competition. Some of you might know Zindi, but Zindi or Kago, all these one are non-academic competition. SemEval is a competition by ACL. You can see, SemEval is ACL event, just like we have ACL in NACOL, So SemEval is a competition, but for semantic analysis. And the aim is, try to, do some research with different people to push the state of the art for different kind of tasks. Now, when you participate in SemEval, the basic idea is you write a paper and, write your experiment, explain how you do that. And now you attend a workshop for SemEval workshop, which will be co-located in, ACL-based conference. That is what SemEval is. So for the first years, SemEval started for more than a decade, but there wasn't any African language part of the SemEval. So we submitted a proposal this year that, hey, we want to include sentiment analysis for African languages. And that's how we, brought SemEval into African languages. And this year for the SemEval, more than 50, proposals, but only 12 proposals were accepted. And now we have SemEvals. So what SemEvals includes? So SemEvals of today, it includes 18 languages in Africa. And basically, we have different kind of tasks for the SemEval. So we have monolingual tasks, we have multilingual, we have zero shot. And what do we mean by monolingual? So we have a language like Kinyarwanda, and you are actually just perform sentiment analysis on this language. That's a simple task we have. And that we have, I think, in task A, because we have different tasks. In task A, we have 18 languages, 15 languages, I guess, that you can do that. Now, the second task, task B, is multilingual. So we combine all these African languages into a single task data set, training data set, and, evaluation data set, and ask people to do multilingual. And then we have zero shot. So zero shot also without, training data. Just leverage any data set you can think of or any data sets to, perform. So this tag is not only for African researchers, but, any other person can participate. And, at the end, which the workshop will be next year, after, you participate, you submit your, what we call a system description paper, you will be assigned another person to review. So each person that participates in the shared task will review paper. But also the task does not actually, okay, these are the languages we have. We have the 18 languages. I think some of them are missing. We have 18 here, I think there are 16. And we also have competition, a kind of, award and prize that we give to the participants. We have 3, I think, different kind of award. The first one, I think, is Africa Link. So how do you even participate for the shared task? People can form a team of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they will submit a single submission. Not everyone in the team, but they go together, do the research experiment together, and do a single submission to the system, which is in Coda Lab, and which is here. This is the page for the AfriSenti, where people can be able to go there. And we have Africa League, Masters and Undergraduate League, and Worldwide League. So all of these categories, we have prize award that will be given to the best system, people with best system. You can find out more about all these informations from AfriSenti SemEval. We have a lot of information there. In fact, we have a Slack channel where people, if they have questions, they can ask. And also we have a community call with participants in SemEval, which will happen on Friday, where participants, if they have any questions regarding the SemEval, can ask questions, and all the organizers are expected to be there, then they can answer their question. At this moment, we have over 150 teams that sign up for the AfriSenti. So you can see it's really gaining a lot of attraction for people within the Africa and outside Africa to see how we can participate in this shared task. And we have these are some of the organizers. Yeah, so how to participate? Basically, one can select any task you want. So I said we have 3 tasks, whether monolingual, multilingual, or 0 shots. You can select 1 or 2 or anyone. You can also form a team of 1 person or 2 person or anyone, and then you go and register in the website. What we release is what we call development set. So at this time, what we release is we develop the training data development set. So people can iterate, do the experiment, develop a model. In January, we'll release a test data where people can now practice their models, they develop on the test data. And now they submit, and I think in March, the data submission will be ready, will be due. And now we have best paper award. Apart from the prize for the best system, we have best paper award. So people that write paper, we have a best paper award as well. And now attend SemEval workshop co-located with ACL. I think it will be SemEval next year. I mean, I'm not sure which country, but it will be announced soon. All right, so that's about AfriSenti. Now let's move to the final one, which is AfriHate, which is basically hate and offensive language detection in African languages. So still the same problem we discussed about AfriSenti, African languages, no availability of data sets to do this stuff. So this is really even more important than sentiment, because hate speech is something, pervasive, and, it can cause chaos. It can cause, a lot of disruption in the community and society. With advent of this social media, hate speech, move faster. It moves with speed of light, and it disrupts the community. It disrupts any kind of society if there is hate speech. But the problem is still, in Africa, the social media such as Facebook, Twitter, they don't actually have the, tools to detect hate speech. What they basically do is they do what we call, manual detection. So if there is something that is hateful or offensive, the only way even Twitter they can, block it is when people, promote or, flag a tweet or post as offensive or hate speech. So that's only way, when many people flag it, they will understand this is hateful, and now they can block or remove it. The problem is they don't have the tool resources such as dataset, hate speech. What is hate speech in this kind of African languages? So, for example, in Nigeria, there was a post by president, and when people from Nigeria think that is offensive and hateful, they now start flagging that tweet until it get attention because it was massively, flagged, and then they take down that, unlike in, developed nation in English, they have language model that can, automatically detect on the spot when something is, So we had a, talk with Twitter, and they told us that's what they were basically doing. Even at this moment, Twitter, they are doing, collecting data for 3 languages in Africa. One of them, I think, from Nigeria, one is from Ghana. And what they were basically doing is the same task now we are doing. They are trying to develop a corpus for hate speech, especially the lexicons. They are collecting lexicons. So, so this is project funded by Lacuna that will try to work toward that direction. And also Kinyarwanda, we included it because at the initial stage, the languages we have were actually 14 languages, which were approved by Lacuna, but we felt like because we do this AfriSenti, those languages that we included in AfriSenti, we can also include them here in these languages. But this is really collaborative work we have from Bayer University and Bayer University Ethiopia. We also have, collaborators, Ruaya, which is basically Ruaya is a startup in UK that basically works in hate speech detection in, over the internet. We are collaborating with them. That's AfriHate. We need to love one another and, avoid spreading hate. And we hope at the end of these data set, we'll be able to train, create language models that will be readily available for hate speech detection in any of the African languages that is in our data set. So for the languages involved, we have, many languages in these, countries. For Rwanda, we have Kinyarwanda, and in Ethiopia, where we have a lot of, issues right now. We also have all of the languages: Amharic, Tigrinya, Oromo, Somali, and this is really going to be helpful. We hope to be able to, detect any kind of offensive and hate speech at the end of the day after the project. And for all of these languages, especially for those that, part of our initial plan, we intend to, annotate, create data set, annotate 10,000 tweets in each language. And so that's the idea for all of these languages. So I think that's, the end of my talk. If there are more questions, I'm happy to answer the question. Thank you.